again, didn't you?
You checked my messages.
The phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m., and I already knew what it meant before I even looked at the screen. Jennifer's name glowed in the darkness of our bedroom, mocking me from the nightstand where she'd forgotten to take her backup phone. Come pick me up from Arnold's place, now. I stared at the message for a full minute, letting the bitter taste of reality settle in my mouth like cheap coffee. 3 years of marriage, and it had come to this. My wife texting me from another man's apartment at 3 a.m, expecting me to play the role of her personal chauffeur service. Well, sweetheart, tonight's the night you learn that even the most patient doormat eventually gets tired of being stepped on. I'm Jake Morrison, mechanical engineer at Coastal Design Solutions, and until tonight, I was the kind of guy who fixed problems quietly, methodically, without making a scene. I built bridges for a living, ironic considering how spectacularly my own personal bridges were about to collapse. Instead of grabbing my car keys like the obedient husband she expected, I did something that would have shocked the old me. I ordered her an Uber, but not to our house, to the Greyhound station downtown. Let her figure out how to get home from there. The rain hammered against our kitchen windows as I sat at the table, spreading out blueprints for the Harbor District project. My hands were steady as I reviewed stress calculations, but my mind was spinning through 3 years of lies, excuses, and late nights at the office. Jennifer thought I was clueless about her affair with Arnold Kessler, her so-called colleague from the accounting firm. She had no idea I'd been tracking her location for months, watching the pattern emerge like a mathematical equation I couldn't ignore. Arnold Kessler. Even his name sounded pretentious. The guy drove a cherry red Porsche and wore cologne that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He was everything I wasn't, flashy, smooth-talking, and apparently irresistible to my wife. But Arnold had one crucial flaw. He was sloppy. And Jennifer had another. She underestimated me. While she was probably cursing my name from the back of that Uber, I was busy packing her designer handbags into cardboard boxes. Her precious Gucci purse, the one she'd bought with our joint savings account for client meetings. The Jimmy Choo shoes she claimed were necessary for professional appearances. The silk scarves that smelled like Arnold's cologne. Every item went into those boxes with methodical precision. I wasn't angry. Anger was too messy, too unpredictable. This was something colder, more calculated. This was engineering applied to human relationships. By the time I heard her key in the front door at 6:23 a.m., I was sitting calmly at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the harbor orange through our window. The boxes were stacked neatly by the front door, each one labeled with her name in my careful engineer's handwriting. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Jennifer stormed into the kitchen like a hurricane, her hair disheveled and her designer dress wrinkled from what I could only assume was a very uncomfortable night. Her makeup was smeared, and she looked like she'd been crying or screaming, probably both. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she demanded, her voice shrill enough to wake the neighbors. "I needed you to pick me up, and you sent me to the bus station?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch between us like a taut cable. When I finally spoke, my voice was perfectly calm. "I've been thinking about that, Jennifer, about what you need versus what you want, and I've come to a conclusion." She noticed the boxes then, her eyes widening as she recognized her belongings stacked like evidence in a courtroom. "What is this supposed to mean?" "It means you have 24 hours to make a choice." I stood up slowly, enjoying the way she instinctively stepped back. For the first time in our marriage, I was the one in control of the conversation. "You can take your designer accessories and your late-night meetings with Arnold, or you can stay here and explain to me why my wife is texting me from another man's apartment at 3 a.m. Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, calculation, and finally, a desperate attempt at innocence. "Jake, you're being ridiculous. Arnold and I were just working on the Henderson account, and it got late, and—" "Stop!" The word came out sharper than I intended, cutting through her rehearsed explanation like a blade. "Just stop. We both know what this is about, so let's skip the part where you insult my intelligence." For the first time since I'd known her, Jennifer Morrison was speechless. Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to find words that didn't exist. The mask she'd been wearing for months was finally slipping, and underneath it was something I'd never seen before. Fear. 24 hours, I repeated, walking past her toward the front door. Choose what you love more, your Gucci purse or Arnold's cologne. I left her standing there in our kitchen, surrounded by the boxes that contained 3 years of lies, and headed to work like it was any other Tuesday morning. By noon, Jennifer had made her choice. And it wasn't the one I'd hoped for, though it was exactly the one I'd expected. My phone started buzzing during the weekly project meeting, text after text flooding in from coworkers, friends, and even my boss. Jennifer had launched what could only be described as a full-scale character assassination campaign, and she'd done it with the precision of a military operation. "Jake, we need to talk," said Tom Bradley, my supervisor, as the meeting broke up. His face was grim, and I could see the discomfort in his eyes. "My office. Now." I followed him down the hallway, past cubicles where my colleagues suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. The whispers started before we were even out of earshot. Tom closed his office door and gestured for me to sit down. He was a decent guy, mid-50s with graying hair and the kind of steady demeanor that made him good at managing engineers. But right now, he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "I'm going to cut straight to the point," he said, settling behind his desk. "I got a call from Jennifer this morning. She's making some serious accusations." "What kind of accusations?" I asked, though I already knew. Jennifer was nothing if not predictable. "She says you've been having an affair, says you've become controlling and aggressive. She sent screenshots of text messages that—" He paused, clearly uncomfortable. "That paints you in a pretty bad light." I almost smiled. Almost. "Tom, can I see these screenshots?" He turned his computer monitor toward me, and there they were. Text messages that looked like they came from my phone, complete with my contact information and profile picture. Messages that made me sound like a possessive, cheating husband who was threatening his innocent wife. The problem was, I'd never sent any of them. "These are fake," I said simply. Tom's eyebrows shot up. "Jake, I've known you for 5 years. If you tell me they're fake, I believe you, but I need proof. This kind of accusation, it could affect your security clearance, your career, everything." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my text history with Jennifer. Here's every message I've actually sent her in the past month. You can see the timestamps, the metadata, everything. I handed him the phone. "And Tom, you might want to look at the messages she sent me last night." He scrolled through the conversation, his expression growing more troubled with each passing second. When he reached the 3 a.m. text from Arnold's apartment, he let out a low whistle. This is a mess, Jake." "It's about to get messier," I said, taking my phone back, "because I'm not going to sit quietly while she destroys my reputation to cover up her affair." That afternoon, I did something that would have been unthinkable to the old Jake Morrison. I forwarded Jennifer's confession texts, the ones she'd sent months ago during her guilty phases, admitting to her mistakes and begging for forgiveness, to her boss at Hartwell and Associates. I didn't send them anonymously. I didn't hide behind fake accounts or clever schemes. I simply forwarded them with a brief professional message. "I thought you should be aware that your employee has been using company time and resources for personal matters that may reflect poorly on your firm." By 4 p.m., Jennifer was calling me every 10 minutes, her voice getting more hysterical with each voicemail. "Jake, you can't do this to me. This is my career. Please, we can work this out. Don't destroy everything we've built. You're being vindictive and cruel, and this isn't like you." She was right about one thing. This wasn't like the old me. The old me would have suffered in silence, would have tried to fix things through communication and counseling and all the other useless tools that only work when both people want the relationship to survive. But the old me was gone, packed away in boxes just like her designer accessories. Around 5:30, as I was finishing up the stress analysis for the Harbor District Bridge, my phone rang. Not Jennifer this time. Arnold. "Morrison." His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I asked, leaning back in my office chair. "I can't imagine what we'd have to discuss." "You know exactly what this is about. Jennifer told me what you did today. This has gone far enough." I could hear traffic in the background, the distinctive rumble of his Porsche's engine. He was probably driving to my office, thinking he could intimidate me with his flashy car and his expensive suit. "Arnold," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "I haven't even gotten started yet." "Listen to me very carefully," he said, and I could hear the threat in his voice. "If you don't back down, if you keep trying to hurt Jennifer, you're going to regret it. I have resources you can't imagine, and I will use them." I hung up on him. 20 minutes later, I was walking through the parking garage when I spotted the cherry red Porsche parked in the visitor section. Arnold was leaning against it, arms crossed, trying to look intimidating in his $1,000 suit. He was about my height, but softer around the edges, the kind of man who stayed in shape with expensive gym memberships and personal trainers rather than actual work. His hair was perfectly styled, and his shoes probably cost more than most people made in a week. "Morrison," he called out as I approached my truck. "I told you we needed to talk." I stopped about 10 feet away from him, close enough to see the anger in his eyes, but far enough to stay out of arm's reach. And I told you I wasn't interested. But since you're here, let me make something clear. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken that morning, his Porsche parked outside Jennifer's apartment building at 2 a.m., license plate clearly visible. I know where you live, Arnold. I know where you work, where you eat lunch, where you get your hair cut. I know about your gambling debts and your cocaine habit and the fact that you're 3 months behind on your rent. His face went pale. You're bluffing. Am I? I scrolled to another photo, Arnold coming out of a downtown casino at 3 a.m. the previous week, looking disheveled and desperate. You see, unlike you, I'm good at research. It's what engineers do. We gather data, analyze patterns, and solve problems. I put my phone away and took a step closer. Right now, you're my problem, and I'm very good at solving problems. Arnold straightened up, trying to regain his composure. You think you can threaten me? I'll have you arrested for harassment. With what evidence? I asked. I haven't threatened you, Arnold. I've simply informed you that I'm aware of your situation. What you do with that information is up to you. I walked past him toward my truck, but I could feel his eyes on my back. As I opened the driver's door, I turned back to him. Oh, and Arnold, you might want to check your car before you drive home tonight. These parking garages can be rough on expensive paint jobs. I drove away, leaving him standing there in his wrinkled suit, probably wondering if I was bluffing about the car. I wasn't. The next morning brought a new level of warfare that even I hadn't anticipated. Jennifer had spent the night rallying her troops, and her first lieutenant was her mother. Isabella Hartwell, the kind of woman who could freeze water with her stare and had never met a situation she couldn't control through sheer force of personality. Isabella had money, connections, and the moral flexibility of a career politician. She also had a voice that could cut through steel and a talent for making grown men feel like misbehaving children. Under normal circumstances, she terrified me. These weren't normal circumstances. I was eating breakfast and reading the morning news when my phone rang. Isabella's name appeared on the screen like a declaration of war. Jacob Morrison, she said, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that only comes from inherited wealth and unshakable self-righteousness. I think it's time you and I had a conversation about your recent behavior. Good morning, Isabella, I said pleasantly. How's the weather in your ivory tower this morning? There was a pause. Isabella wasn't used to people talking back to her. I beg your pardon? I said good morning. It's a common greeting, though I suppose courtesy isn't something they teach in finishing school anymore. Don't you dare take that tone with me, young man. I know exactly what you've been doing to my daughter, and it stops now. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch. What exactly do you think I've been doing, Isabella? You've been harassing her, threatening her career, and making her life miserable because you can't accept that your marriage is over. Interesting perspective, I said. Tell me, did Jennifer mention why our marriage is over? Did she happen to share the part about her 3 a.m. booty calls from Arnold's apartment? Another pause, longer this time. Jennifer made a mistake. Jennifer made a choice, I interrupted. Every night for the past 6 months, she made the same choice. The only mistake was thinking I'd sit quietly while she destroyed our marriage and then tried to destroy my reputation to cover her tracks. You listened to me very carefully. Isabella's voice had gone cold, the way it did when she was about to deliver what she considered a finishing blow. I have friends in this city, important friends. Friends who can make sure you never work as an engineer again. Friends who can make your life very, very difficult. I almost laughed. Almost. Isabella, let me tell you something about your important friends. I've built bridges for half of them. I've designed their buildings, their offices, their vacation homes, and unlike you, I actually work for a living. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you, I said, standing up and walking to my laptop. You see, while you were busy raising your daughter to believe she could treat people like disposable accessories, I was learning how to solve complex problems. And right now, you're a complex problem. I opened my email and scrolled to a folder I'd labeled Insurance. Inside were screenshots, photos, and documents I'd been collecting for months. Not because I'd planned this war, but because I'd learned long ago that information was the most valuable currency in any relationship. Did you know, I continued, that your daughter has been embezzling money from client accounts to fund her lifestyle? Small amounts, very clever, spread across dozens of accounts, so it would be hard to detect. She's good with numbers, I'll give her that. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Of course, I'm sure it was just temporary borrowing, I continued. She probably planned to pay it all back eventually. But the state licensing board might not see it that way. Neither would her clients, or the local newspaper. You wouldn't dare, Isabella whispered, but I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. Try me, I said, and hung up. Within an hour, my phone was ringing again. This time it was Jennifer, and she was sobbing. Jake, please, you have to stop this. My mother is talking about lawyers, and my boss is asking questions, and Arnold is freaking out about his car. What about Arnold's car? I asked innocently. You know what you did. The paint, the tires, the... She stopped, realizing she was admitting to something I hadn't actually confessed to. Jennifer, I said gently, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm glad you called because I wanted to discuss our living situation. What do you mean? I mean you have until Friday to move out. I've already spoken to a lawyer about the house. Since it's in my name, and since you've been using our joint accounts to fund your affair, I think you'll find that your legal options are somewhat limited. You can't just throw me out. This is my home, too. Actually, I can, and I am. I looked out the window at the harbor, watching the morning fog roll in like a gray blanket over the water. But I'm not unreasonable. You can take your clothes, your personal items, and that red BMW you bought with our savings account. Everything else stays here. Jake, please, can't we talk about this like adults? Can't we try to work things out? For a moment, just a moment, I heard an echo of the woman I'd married 3 years ago. The woman who'd promised to love me for better or worse, in sickness and in health, until we were parted by something other than Arnold Kessler's cologne and her mother's toxic ambition. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who thought she could lie to my face for 6 months and then play the victim when the truth came out. We are talking about it, I said, like adults. Adults who understand that actions have consequences and choices have prices. You made your choice, Jennifer. Now you get to live with the price. That evening, I drove to the Anchor, a dive bar down by the docks where the local workers went to drink away their troubles. It wasn't the kind of place Jennifer would ever set foot in. Too working class, too real, too honest about what it was. I was halfway through my second beer when Arnold walked in. He looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He scanned the bar until he spotted me, then walked over like a man heading to his own execution. Morrison, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. We need to end this. I took a sip of my beer and studied him. Up close, I could see the desperation in his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly as he reached for the drink menu. And what, exactly? This game you're playing, this revenge fantasy. It's gone too far. Has it? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, we're just getting started. Arnold leaned forward, lowering his voice. Look, I know you're angry about Jennifer. I get it. But what you're doing to her, to me, to her family, it's not going to bring her back. You're right, I said. It's not. But then again, I don't want her back. He blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. Then what do you want? I finished my beer and signaled the bartender for another. I want you to understand something, Arnold. For 6 months, you and my wife made me look like a fool. You laughed at me behind my back, probably made jokes about the clueless husband who didn't know his wife was cheating. You turned my marriage into a punchline. Jake, I'm not finished. My voice was quiet, but something in my tone made him shut up immediately. You want to know what I want? I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to know what it's like when your whole world gets turned upside down by people who think they're smarter than you. I leaned forward, close enough that he could smell the beer on my breath. I want you to lose everything that matters to you, piece by piece, until you're sitting in a bar at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, wondering how your life went so wrong so fast. Arnold's face had gone pale. You're insane. No, I said, standing up and dropping a 20 on the table. I'm an engineer, and I'm very, very good at my job. Friday came faster than I expected, and with it came the kind of autumn storm that made the harbor look like a scene from a disaster movie. Rain lashed against the windows of our house, my house now, as I watched Jennifer load the last of her belongings into her BMW. She'd been crying on and off for the past 3 days, alternating between rage and desperate attempts to negotiate. But the math was simple. She'd made her choice months ago, and now she got to live with the consequences. Isabella had tried calling twice more, each time with increasingly creative threats about what her important friends would do to me. I'd listened politely, then forwarded her voicemails to my lawyer along with the documentation of Jennifer's financial irregularities. Sometimes the best defense was letting your opponents dig their own graves. Arnold, meanwhile, had gone suspiciously quiet. His Porsche had been in the shop for 4 days getting the paint damage repaired, and according to my sources at Hartwell and Associates, he'd been asking increasingly desperate questions about transferring to their Seattle office. I was starting to think he might actually be smarter than he looked. I was wrong. That evening, as I sat in my kitchen reviewing blueprints for the Harbor District project, I heard a car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I could see Arnold's freshly repaired Porsche gleaming under the streetlight like a red warning sign. He sat in the car for a full 5 minutes before finally getting out, and I could see him steeling himself for whatever confrontation he'd planned. He walked to my front door with the determined stride of a man who'd convinced himself he was doing something brave. I opened the door before he could knock. "Arnold," I said pleasantly. "What a surprise. Come to admire my landscaping?" He was trying to look intimidating, but the effect was somewhat ruined by the fact that he was soaked from the 30-foot walk from his car to my porch. His expensive haircut was plastered to his head, and his designer jacket was dripping onto my welcome mat. "We're going to settle this tonight," he said, pushing past me into my living room. "This whole thing has gotten completely out of hand." I closed the door and turned to face him, noting the way he was trying to claim the dominant position in my own home. It was a classic power play, the kind of thing they probably taught in whatever business school had produced his particular brand of arrogance. "Settle what, exactly?" I asked, genuinely curious about his plan. "This harassment campaign you've been running against Jennifer and me. The threats, the stalking, the property damage. All of it." I almost smiled. "Arnold, I haven't harassed anyone. I haven't made any threats, and I certainly haven't damaged any property. If you have evidence to the contrary, I suggest you take it to the police." "Don't play dumb with me," he snapped, his composure finally cracking. "I know it was you who ruined my car. I know you're the one who's been spreading lies about my finances, and I know you're the reason Jennifer's boss has been asking questions about her accounts." "Interesting theory," I said, settling into my favorite chair and gesturing for him to sit on the couch. "But you're missing the most important question." "Which is? Why would I need to spread lies about your finances when the truth is so much more interesting?" Arnold went very still. "What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a folder labeled Research. "It means I know about the gambling debts, Arnold. All of them. The $50,000 you owe to that casino downtown, the $30,000 you borrowed from your brother, the credit cards you've maxed out trying to maintain your lifestyle." His face was getting paler with each number I recited. "I also know about the money you've been skimming from client accounts to cover your losses. Small amounts, very clever, just like Jennifer's little embezzlement scheme. You two really are perfect for each other." "You can't prove any of that," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Can't I?" I scrolled to another file. Bank records, casino transaction logs, credit reports. It's amazing what you can find when you know where to look, and when you have friends in the right places. I leaned forward, enjoying the way he instinctively pressed back into the couch cushions. "Here's what's going to happen, Arnold. You're going to disappear from Jennifer's life. You're going to transfer to that Seattle office you've been asking about, and you're going to pray that I don't decide to share this information with anyone who might find it interesting. And if I don't? Then your gambling buddies are going to find out that you've been stealing money to pay your debts. Your boss is going to find out that his trusted employee is a thief, and your family is going to find out that their golden boy is a fraud." Arnold stood up abruptly, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to hit me. Instead, he turned toward the door, then stopped and looked back. "You think you've won something here, Morrison? You think destroying Jennifer and me is going to make you feel better?" "I don't need to feel better," I said. "I just need you to understand that there are consequences for treating people like they don't matter." He left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I watched through the curtains as he sat in his car for several minutes, probably trying to figure out his next move. What he didn't know was that I'd already figured it out for him. The next morning, I received a text from Jennifer. "Arnold is transferring to Seattle. He says it's a promotion, but I know it's because of you. Are you happy now?" I stared at the message for a long time, waiting to feel something, satisfaction, vindication, maybe even regret. Instead, I felt nothing but a cold, empty certainty that this was far from over. Jennifer had underestimated me once. She was about to do it again. That afternoon, I drove to Hartwell and Associates for a meeting I'd scheduled with Jennifer's boss, Richard Hartwell, Isabella's younger brother, and the kind of man who'd built his reputation on integrity and client trust. He was waiting for me in his corner office, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of steady demeanor that made clients feel comfortable trusting him with their money. "Mr. Morrison," he said, shaking my hand, "I have to say, this is an unusual situation." "I appreciate you seeing me, Mr. Hartwell. I know this puts you in a difficult position." He gestured for me to sit down, then settled behind his desk with the careful movements of a man who'd learned to think before he spoke. Let's be direct. You've made some serious allegations about my employee, your wife. Soon-to-be ex-wife, I corrected. And I haven't made allegations. I've provided documentation. I handed him a manila folder containing copies of bank statements, transaction records, and account summaries that painted a very clear picture of Jennifer's financial activities over the past 6 months. Richard spent 20 minutes reviewing the documents, his expression growing more troubled with each page. Finally, he looked up at me with the kind of weariness that came from a lifetime of dealing with human nature at its worst. "This is comprehensive," he said, "and very damaging." "It's also accurate," I replied. "Every document, every transaction, every transfer, it's all verifiable through your own records." "Mr. Morrison, I have to ask, what do you want from me? What's your endgame here?" I leaned back in my chair, considering the question. "I want Jennifer to face the consequences of her choices. She destroyed our marriage, tried to destroy my reputation, and embezzled money from your clients to fund her affair. She needs to be held accountable." "And if I don't pursue this?" "Then I take it to the state licensing board, the district attorney's office, and every newspaper in the city. Your choice, Mr. Hartwell. Handle it internally, or watch it become a public scandal that destroys your family's reputation." He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the harbor where storm clouds were gathering for another round of rain. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with resignation. "Jennifer will be terminated immediately. I'll make sure she never works in accounting again, at least not in this state. As for the money she took, we'll handle restitution quietly." "Thank you," I said, standing up. I know this wasn't easy. "Mr. Morrison," he called as I reached the door, "I hope you realize that this kind of revenge, it changes you. It makes you into someone you might not recognize when it's all over." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "Mr. Hartwell, I stopped recognizing myself the night my wife texted me from another man's apartment. Everything since then has just been adjustment." I left him sitting in his office, probably wondering how his family had produced someone like Jennifer, and drove home through the gathering storm. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Jennifer had moved out and 2 days after Arnold had officially transferred to Seattle. I was at my drafting table, putting the finishing touches on the Harbor District Bridge design, when my phone rang. Isabella's name on the screen no longer filled me with dread. If anything, I was curious to see what new strategy she'd devised. "Jacob," she said, and I could hear something different in her voice, desperation masquerading as authority. "We need to meet." "Do we?" I asked, not looking up from my blueprints. "I thought we'd said everything we needed to say." "My daughter is living in a studio apartment and working as a waitress. Arnold has disappeared completely, and my brother has banned Jennifer from ever setting foot in his office again." Her voice cracked slightly. "Enough is enough." I set down my pencil and gave her my full attention. "Isabella, are you calling to surrender?" "I'm calling to negotiate." That was interesting. Isabella Hartwell didn't negotiate. She dictated terms and expected compliance. The fact that she was even using the word meant I'd hurt her more than I'd realized. "I'm listening," I said. "Lunch? Today? The Harbor Club. We settle this like civilized people." The Harbor Club was Isabella's territory, an exclusive restaurant where she held court with the other wealthy widows who ran the city's social scene. It was a power play, one last attempt to control the situation by choosing the battlefield. "Fine," I said. 1 o'clock. I arrived at the Harbor Club 15 minutes early and spent the time studying the other diners. Politicians, business owners, society matrons who lunched on gossip and expensive salads. These were Isabella's people, her natural habitat. She arrived exactly on time, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. But I could see the cracks in her armor, the slight tremor in her hands, the way her makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. "Jacob," she said, settling into the chair across from me with the careful movements of someone trying to project strength she didn't feel. "Isabella, you look tired." "I've had better weeks." She signaled the waiter with the imperious gesture of someone accustomed to immediate service. "Shall we order first, or would you prefer to skip straight to business?" "Business," I said. "I'm not really hungry." She nodded, dismissing the waiter with a wave. "Very well. What will it take to end this war you've declared on my family?" I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "That's an interesting way to phrase it. I didn't declare war, Isabella. I responded to one." "Jennifer made a mistake." "Jennifer made dozens of mistakes," I interrupted. "And when those mistakes caught up with her, she tried to destroy my reputation to cover her tracks. That's not a mistake. That's a calculated attack." Isabella's composure slipped for just a moment, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Genuine fear. "What do you want? Money?" A public apology? Name your price. I want Jennifer to understand that actions have consequences. I want her to know what it feels like to have her life turned upside down by someone she underestimated. She's learned her lesson, Isabella said quickly. She's lost her career, her home, her relationship. Surely that's enough? I shook my head. That's not enough. That's just the beginning. The color drained from Isabella's face. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken that morning. Jennifer walking into a diner downtown, wearing a uniform and looking exhausted. Did you know she's been telling people that I'm stalking her? That I'm the reason she can't find decent work? Are you stalking her? I'm documenting her continued attempts to damage my reputation, I said calmly. Every lie she tells, every false accusation she makes, every attempt to paint herself as the victim, I'm keeping track of all of it. Isabella leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Jacob, please, she's my daughter. Whatever she did to you, whatever mistakes she made, she's still my child. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Where was that maternal concern when she was destroying my marriage? I asked. Where was it when she was encouraging Jennifer to think she could treat people like disposable accessories? I never encouraged. You raised her to believe that money and connections could solve any problem. You taught her that consequences were for other people, and when she got caught, your first instinct was to threaten me instead of holding her accountable. Isabella sat back in her chair, looking older than I'd ever seen her. So what happens now? Do you destroy her completely? Do you keep punishing her until there's nothing left? I considered the question seriously. That depends entirely on Jennifer. If she stops trying to blame me for her problems, if she accepts responsibility for what she did, then maybe we can all move on with our lives. And if she doesn't? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then she'll learn that I'm much better at playing the long game than she ever imagined. That evening, I was at home reviewing the final specifications for the Harbor District Bridge when someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Jennifer standing on my porch, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual designer outfits, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married 3 years ago. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Hello, Jake, she said quietly. Can we talk? We're talking now. She glanced around nervously, as if she expected neighbors to be watching from their windows. Can I come in, please? Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her enter. She walked into the living room, our old living room, and looked around at the space that had once been her home. It looks different, she said. I got rid of some things, I replied. Decluttered. She flinched at the implication, but didn't respond. Instead, she turned to face me with the kind of desperate determination I'd seen in cornered animals. I know you hate me, she said. I know you have every right to hate me. But this has to stop, Jake. This campaign of revenge, it's destroying both of us. I'm doing fine, I said. Are you? She gestured around the empty room. You're living alone in a house full of memories, spending your evenings plotting ways to hurt me. That's not fine, Jake. That's not healthy. I almost laughed. Jennifer, are you seriously trying to psychoanalyze me right now? I'm trying to save us both from this spiral we're in. She took a step closer, and I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. I made terrible mistakes. I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to apologize for. But this revenge, it's not making either of us happy. Happiness was never the goal, I said. Then what is? What do you want from me? I studied her face, looking for any sign of the manipulative woman who'd tried to destroy my reputation 3 weeks ago. All I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret. I want you to stop playing the victim, I said finally. I want you to stop telling people that I'm the villain in this story. I want you to take responsibility for the choices you made. Okay, she said quickly. I can do that. I will do that. I want you to pay back every penny you stole from your clients. She nodded, though I could see the fear in her eyes. It might take time, but yes, I'll find a way. And I want you to stay out of my life, completely. No more surprise visits, no more attempts at reconciliation, no more using mutual friends to check up on me. Done. She was crying now, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jake, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed something beautiful and precious. But please, can we just end this here? Can we both try to move on? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my bank account, who'd promised to love me forever, and then thrown it all away for a man who'd fled to Seattle at the first sign of trouble. Okay, I said finally. She blinked, clearly not expecting such a simple answer. Okay? It's over, Jennifer. You're right. This isn't making either of us happy. So it's over. She sagged with relief, and for a moment I thought she might actually collapse. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. I walked her to the door, and she paused on the threshold to look back at me one last time. For what it's worth, she said, I really did love you. Maybe not the way I should have. Maybe not enough to keep me from making horrible mistakes, but I did love you. I know, I said. I loved you too. After she left, I stood in my empty living room for a long time, listening to the silence and waiting to feel something, relief, satisfaction, maybe even peace. Instead, I felt nothing but the hollow echo of a bridge that had finally finished collapsing. The Harbor District Bridge was completed 6 months later, a beautiful span of steel and concrete that would carry traffic safely across the water for decades to come. I attended the dedication ceremony and watched the mayor cut the ribbon while photographers captured the moment for posterity. It was a good bridge, built to last, engineered to withstand whatever storms might come. Unlike some things in life, it was designed never to fall down.